Last time on What If Palpatine Didn't Hold Back Against the Jedi Masters? Palpatine commits a massacre that changes the course of the galaxy, and Anakin grows suspicious of what Palpatine is plotting. With the help of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, they begin an espionage plot against Palpatine. However, Palpatine knew their plan all along and set a trap for the trio, even with a masterful escape from Anakin that would not last long, as Obi-Wan turned to the dark side, killing Yoda in the process. Now Anakin flees back to his homeworld of Tatooine, away from the chaos in the universe. The question remains, what led Obi-Wan to the dark side? Will Anakin be able to protect his own younglings from Obi-Wan's wrath? Stay tuned for the amazing video that we have today, which is What If Obi-Wan Were a Sith Lord? This story begins right where we left off, with Anakin watching over his children on Tatooine, as they play together at the Lars homestead, where he's settled with Owen and Beru. He's pleased to see them playing with one another, and he's also incredibly impressed by their progress in the Force. Anakin, however, in the dead of night continues to have nightmares about his battle with Obi-Wan. He sees on Mustafar the fiery demise of Yoda and his master's dead yellow eyes. He wishes that he could have saved the Grand Master, and he wishes that his wife had survived. Because of his trauma, Anakin begins to cut himself off from the Force a little bit. He still trains his children, but he isn't living up to his full potential. He no longer trains as much as he did with the lightsaber, and he meditates less because of the memories that arise from it. Owen and Beru ask if he's okay when they see his behaviors, and Anakin tells them that he's managing. He jokingly remarks that any bowl of bantha stew made by Beru would always lift his spirits. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan on the other side of the galaxy is obsessed with hunting down his former Padawan and his children. Knowing that they could be a great threat to his power, Obi-Wan, also now known as Darth Kryze, wants them dead. He mandates the main mission of his Inquisitors to be to find the Chosen One and end his lineage. While they still hunt for other Jedi, it's more of a side quest for Obi-Wan. So long as Anakin is alive, the hope for the Jedi Order was as well. Meanwhile, during this time, another old face that many would recognize lands on Tatooine. Ahsoka feels like Tatooine is her last resort, as she's been looking for her master for years. She knows that her master hates this planet, but she'd also scoured every corner of the galaxy that had possible significance to him in her search. In addition, it would make sense for him to go back and return to a planet that nobody expected him to, and perhaps reconnect with some old family as well. When Ahsoka lands, she starts asking around town if anyone sees a man who matches Anakin's description. She doesn't expect him to actually go by his real name, of course, because he's on Tatooine and he's a Jedi on the run, so she only asks about his face. Some of the locals say that they've seen a guy who might be the same person, but he looks a little bit older than the person in Ahsoka's photos. They say that the man bears an odd resemblance to General Anakin Skywalker, the Clone Wars hero that had been plastered all over the media for many years during the galactic conflict. Ahsoka says that that's odd, but she couldn't even fathom why they would think that. They say that they might be able to find him in the evenings, having a drink at the Mos Eisley Cantina, as that's where this man went a lot of the weekends. So, Ahsoka ventures to this hive of scum and villainy, and sure enough, she finds Anakin there. Immediately after walking in, she senses her former master in the bar. She looks around, trying to find him, and she sees him at one of the corner tables, trying to hide himself. He perks up when Ahsoka enters, though, clearly having sensed her presence as well, a familiar one in a sea of bounty hunters and scum who are searching for refuge from the Empire. Anakin locks eyes with her, and then he sees her. He gestures that she sit down with him. The two end up having a glorious conversation after embracing and hugging. Anakin almost tears up seeing his old Padawan. He's so happy that she's still alive, especially after the execution of Order 66. At this point, Anakin starts to dive into where he's been over the last 10 years. He tells her about his kids and how he had been staying with his family for the past 10 years. He likes his life here. He's built something that he can actually tolerate, and he's not having to listen to the whims of the Jedi anymore. There's no galactic conflict, there's only his children. His family is the most important thing to him in that moment. Ahsoka is hesitant after hearing this to tell him about what she's been up to. She tells him that she's been working with the rebellion, whispering in the bar, not knowing who would be listening, and tells him that they want him. They want Anakin's talents so that he can lead the galaxy to a place of hope again. She says that she's been searching for him for years as she's ventured across the galaxy, hoping that on one of her missions she would have been able to find him. And sure enough, after coming to Tatooine, there he was. It almost felt destined by the Force. Anakin shakes his head, hesitant at first, especially when she asks if he wants to try and defeat Obi-Wan together, bringing balance to the Force, just like the prophecy foretold. Anakin says that he has children that he has to look after, and Ahsoka ends up passing him something interesting. It's information about Rex and where his whereabouts are, along with info about how to contact him. She says that there are other clones with him that can help protect the kids. Anakin smiles, remembering the old days with Rex. He agrees to Ahsoka's terms and believes that Rex will be an excellent mentor for his children. Anakin is still a little bit hesitant again after his failure at defeating Obi-Wan last time. However, he knows that this is his destiny. The dark side needed to be defeated, and light needed to be restored to the galaxy. Anakin goes back to the Lars homestead and begins packing his things with Ahsoka. He introduces Ahsoka to the kids, and Luke and Leia love the young woman. Ahsoka is also very pleased to meet them, saying that they have their father's spirit inside of them, and their mother's tenacity. After a few days of getting ready and saying final goodbyes to the kids, Rex, Wolf, and Gregor arrive on Tatooine, landing just outside of the Lars homestead. Anakin waits outside of the homestead to meet them, and Rex smiles as he sees his old Jedi General. "Commander Skywalker, it's good to see you again," Rex says, hugging the old general. Anakin smiles back. "It's good to see you too, Rex. I'm glad to see that you're in good health. My children will certainly benefit from your mentorship," Anakin says, bowing his head. "I'll take good care of him, Anakin. Don't you worry, Commander Skywalker," Rex replies, looking at the kids. "Children, this is one of my old friends from the war. He's going to be staying with you for a little bit. As I've explained, I have to go as I have some pressing duties, but you're in good hands. He's like an uncle, I'd say," Anakin tells the kids. Uncle Rex soon becomes a favorite title that Luke and Leia begin using for the clone, and this makes the old man smile. Before he leaves for the city, Anakin hugs his children, saying that he will be back and promising that he will not disappoint them. Owen and Beru end up driving Anakin and Ahsoka into the city, and they hop onto Ahsoka's ship to escape. Before he leaves, Owen looks Anakin dead in the eyes and tells him that he had better be back, because those kids needed him. Anakin says not to worry, and that he will be. Anakin and Ahsoka soar away into the stars, ready for their next adventure. While the pair are embarking on their next journey, Ahsoka begins to fill Anakin in on how Obi-Wan has been a tyrannical leader over the past decade. Anakin is incredibly saddened by how far his master has fallen. "Master, you've been gone for a while, and things have changed. The galaxy's changed, and Obi-Wan has changed," Ahsoka says. "Tell me how, Ahsoka. I need to know everything," Anakin replies. Ahsoka sighs, nodding her head before starting. "He's now the Emperor of this new Republic Order, as he calls it. After the fight on Mustafar, he decided to execute Order 37 and use civilians as hostages to lure out any Force users for their loved ones. Then he executed them in front of their families. He also burned every sacred Jedi text and deleted all documents from the archives about the Force. Now Obi-Wan essentially has an intellectual monopoly over all Force knowledge. He dissolved the Senate immediately and appointed the military into power. All Force users are now under threat by the Inquisitors, the ones that aren't already dead, and especially you and your children. I would be careful if I were you, Anakin." "I see," Anakin responds, nodding somberly. Anakin says it stoically, but Ahsoka can sense the dread that Anakin feels with each new line. "So, Master, what do we do now?" Ahsoka says. Anakin pauses, watching as hyperspace flies by their window. "I don't know, Ahsoka. I have a bad feeling about this." Meanwhile, Obi-Wan is incredibly frustrated with the failure of his Inquisitorius. So he commissions bounty hunters across the galaxy to find the kids and Anakin Skywalker. While the Inquisitors have been successful in hunting other Force users, for some reason Anakin and the kids had eluded their traps. So, even though Obi-Wan despises the idea of using bounty hunters after his experience with them in the box during the Clone Wars, he issues a handsome reward for the capture or death of Anakin's entire family. Obi-Wan is now willing to do whatever it takes to finish off or turn his former Padawan. After he issues the bounty, Obi-Wan begins ruminating in his throne, contemplating his duel with the former Emperor Palpatine. For years, he had resisted the dark side. He had turned away from it, frowned upon its use, and judged those who even considered touching it. However, when he had dueled the Dark Master and unleashed all of that pent-up rage, it had felt liberating. He finally understood it. As their sabers had crossed, and as Obi-Wan caught Palpatine off guard with a taste of his own medicine in an explosive burst of Sith lightning, he leaned into that destructive nature, forcing Sidious off the Senate pod and incinerating his flesh. Sidious was old and Obi-Wan was still young and vivacious, but Obi-Wan was also full of anger. Sidious simply could not compete with how powerful Obi-Wan had become. The Dark Lord was no match for Kenobi because of his youth and because of his rage. Surely Skywalker, a man who had been missing for 10 years, would not be either. One of the hunters that picks up the bounty is Boba Fett, who's already on Tatooine looking to pick up odd jobs for Jabba. He sees the score and his eyes go wide. He adds it to his radar, hoping that perhaps the children will turn up and he can scoop them up. They'd be an easy catch, and they were worth plenty of money to the Empire. Meanwhile, back on Ahsoka's ship, she tells Anakin that in her time of searching the galaxy for him and working on missions for the Rebel Alliance, she'd also stumbled across many ancient secrets that could help them in their conquest of the Sith. She'd learned of a massive temple on Malachor V, which allegedly, according to old secrets, contained legends required to defeat the Sith. Anakin asks her if they're dark side secrets, and his Padawan nods somberly. However, she acknowledges that they might need to understand their opponent in order to defeat him. However, Anakin says that that's exactly the words that Sidious had used with him all those years ago, so that they would have to be very careful. On Tatooine, in Boba's downtime, he makes his way to the hive of scum and villainy that is Mos Eisley Cantina. There, when he's ordering a cold glass of Bantha Brew, which is his favorite beverage, he accidentally bumps shoulders with somebody nearby. "Hey, watch it, Sleemo," Boba remarks. The man turns around and looks at Boba with only one good eye. The other one is clearly scarred and blinded. However, Boba would still recognize that face anywhere. It was his. "Why don't you watch it, you piece of bantha poodoo?" the clone replies in an all too familiar voice. Boba chuckles a little bit loudly. "A clone, eh? I haven't seen one of you in ages. I thought that the Empire was done with you all." Wolf lets a tiny smirk creep up his lips. "Some of us are still kicking," he chirps back. "What's a clone like you doing on Tatooine?" Boba replies, his voice as cold as ice. Wolf's smile dissipates. "Now that's none of your business. I'd recommend getting back to your drink, soldier," he snarks back. Wolf then throws some credit to the bartender. "Keep the change," he grumbles before walking out the door. Underneath his battered helmet, Boba smiles. He doesn't know why the clone is here, but he thinks that he might be able to get a decent bounty for him if he's a deserter from the Empire. After all, why else would he be on this backworld planet in the middle of nowhere? Tatooine was a place for everybody who was fleeing from the government. Boba follows him back to the Lars homestead in the middle of nowhere on Tatooine without being detected, determined to see what this clone was up to. At the same time as this is going on, Anakin and Ahsoka arrive in the sky above Malachor V. It's an abysmal, soul-sucking world. The planet's surface is rocky, dark, and gives off an evil energy that emanates from its core. The sky is stormy, filled with thunder and lightning that booms through the air. "Ahsoka, are you certain about this?" Anakin asks. "I sense a heavy dark side presence on this world." She nods somberly. "We need to find those secrets here to defeat Obi-Wan. Neither of us can do it alone," she replies. Anakin looks at her with a worried expression on his face. "I don't want either of us to turn out like Sidious," he says quietly. Ahsoka smiles. Neither of us will, Anakin. I know that you've never been by the book. Sometimes we need to go against the grain of the code to do the right thing. This is one of those times, Ahsoka consoles him. Anakin looks back out the window at the planet below. I suppose you're right. I've never always followed the book. Have I, Snips? He says. All right, I trust you. The pair descend to the surface, ready for whatever would come their way. When they land, Ahsoka senses multiple dark, familiar presences. They had been followed by the Inquisitors. They would have to lay low while they tried to find the holocron that Ahsoka had read about in her research. On Tatooine, Boba makes his way over to the homestead of Anakin, and he sees that there isn't just one clone who lived there, but there are 3. Perhaps he could collect a bounty for each of these deserters from the Empire, if that's what these guys were. So he continues to watch from the cliff tops nearby, waiting for an opportune time to strike. Back on Malachor, Ahsoka isn't worried about the incoming dark-side hunters. She's dealt with all of them before, and she's managed to escape. Every time. Even after laying low in the shadows, they still can't hide from the predators forever, though. When Ahsoka and Anakin encounter the Inquisitors on the surface, Ahsoka starts to deal with them with ease. She's been keeping up with her Form 4 lightsaber practice, and it shows. She wields the twin sabers with grace. Anakin is rusty. He's still hesitant to get back into using the Force due to what he'd seen happen to Obi-Wan and all of the grooming from Sidious. However, he does tap into it to duel them, pulling his old Clone Wars sabers out that he hadn't touched in years. It still feels like an extension of his body, and his muscle memory starts to kick in. Anakin feels how rejuvenating the light side energy is for him. He taps a little bit deeper into it to fight alongside his former Padawan, just as they had during the Clone Wars. They manage to outduel the Inquisitors despite the weird spinny blades, which catches Anakin off guard momentarily. However, there's still no match for the Chosen One, who even after a long time of not training as hard as he could have, is still very adept in his Force abilities. Eventually, the pair slice the fancy blades of their hunters in half, and they tell them to return to their master, or else. You're a Jedi. You'd never kill an unarmed prisoner. It's against your code, the 5th brother taunts. Ahsoka stares back at him with angry eyes. I'm no Jedi, she utters. The Inquisitors flee, frightened. They contact Obi-Wan on the way off the planet, telling him about the power of Skywalker and Ahsoka. The Emperor is arrogant, and he believes that he has become far stronger than both of them. So, in a fit of rage, he leaves his throne to deal with these 2 Jedi personally. On Tatooine, Boba Fett begins to grow tired of watching these clones. There was a small group of them that didn't do anything interesting except for going outside and moisture farming with 2 other homesteaders. There's no point in sticking around. However, at the end of the day, something catches Boba's eye. The bounty hunter sees Luke and Leia hanging out with the clones, and he checks his datapad to make sure that it's them. Sure enough, their pictures matched the description that had been given by the Emperor, who had allegedly seen them in a vision that he had had. This was a chance for him to get an even larger bounty than he had anticipated for the clones. So, that night, Fett decides that it's time to go in for the kill. On Malachor, just as Anakin and Ahsoka are approaching the old Sith temple that contains the secrets they desire, they try to lift the gate, and it doesn't work. Ahsoka reads the inscription on the walls, and it says that they must tap into the dark side in order to pass through. They each look at each other, silently debating whether or not they should use their darker emotions to raise the door. However, just as they're considering this possibility, both of them stop in their tracks, sensing a cold presence landing on the planet. It's Kenobi himself. Anakin feels something that had remained from all those years ago, but it had been twisted and perverted by the dark side. His master's old self in the Force was almost unrecognizable. However, there was no doubt that it was him. Kenobi had also clearly sensed them. He lands his small Imperial fighter directly in front of the former master-apprentice pair. He exits the ship in his full Imperial garb. His black cape flutters in the small wind of Malachor, and his eyes glow a deep Sith yellow, evil, perverted by the dark side. While Obi-Wan's Force sense was perverted, there was still no doubt that this was him, with his luscious locks flowing in the wind as well. He has an evil smile on his face when he looks at Anakin. "Hello there, my apprentice," he says, igniting his red Sith blade. "Finally, we meet again." Anakin's eyes go wide seeing his master. Obi-Wan, it's not too late. You can come back to the Jedi. You can come back to the light side. I have faith in you. You trained me, Obi-Wan. You were the one who told me about the values of the Jedi. And now you're just turning your back on the light? Obi-Wan scoffs. The values of the light. Yes, the ones that got my master killed by a Sith Lord who leaned into his emotions to fulfill his passions. Yes, the light side of the Force that got the entire Jedi Order killed. Everything I cared about. Yes, the light side of the Force that lost me Satine. Anakin. Oh, Anakin. You know, at one point, you were my brother. And then you just stopped listening to me. You just stopped listening and respecting me, Skywalker. You just forgot everything that I had taught you and went your own way. And then I saw that perhaps the ways of Qui-Gon were right. You both like to throw at the rules, and it seems like every single time you do, it works out for you. So why not write my own rules for once? Why stay bound to a creed that got me nothing and nowhere and got me to lose everything? Obi-Wan snarls. Anakin, I've lost all faith in the Force. I am restricted by the Force, and your actions, your treatment of me and my philosophy, they didn't do anything to sway me from my path now. In fact, you probably contributed to it. When Yoda and Sidious fell to my hand, I knew that I had the right idea. I knew that I was on the right path, and I felt so free. A freedom that you'll never experience, Anakin. Unless you join me. I'll no longer let the Force control my destiny. I will control it. And I want you to have that same feeling of freedom. You and your Padawan. Join me, Skywalker. And together, we can dominate. Anakin shakes his head, flabbergasted at his master. I don't want to join you. I'll never become like you. Anakin, you should become like me. You have so much untapped power and potential. For years, I was jealous of you. Everything just came naturally to you, whereas I had to work, I had to study, I had to become the powerful Jedi I was. But you, everything just came to you with the snap of your fingers. And you had the audacity to tell the Council that you were upset with how they treated you. They made you the youngest Jedi to ever serve on the Council. They were going to promote you to Master at some point or another. Don't you understand? Anakin, your disrespect baffles me. Anakin, join me. I don't want to kill you. Obi-Wan finishes. In response, Anakin ignites his lightsaber. So be it. Be shackled by the Force, Skywalker. Obi-Wan blasts a bolt of Force lightning in their direction, and both of them block it with their sabers. Anakin needs to tap into this deep well of Force in his soul, channeling the powers of old, and he ends up absorbing Obi-Wan's lightning with his hands, just like Yoda had back in the day. He feels the living Force flowing through him, just like Qui-Gon had told him to do all of those years ago. In a way, he could sense the spirits of many Jedi long past. He could feel some of his peers who had died during Order 66, even though he couldn't see them. Their energy propelled his use of the Force. After he absorbs this blow, Anakin forces it back in Obi-Wan's direction, who's stunned and who is incinerated by a storm of his own creation. He never anticipated that Anakin would have been this powerful, especially after the 10 years in solitude. Obi-Wan is still alive at the end of this, but his appearance is marred by lightning. In this moment, Anakin goes to cradle him, and they speak about how possibly in another universe things may have ended differently, and how they could have been brothers. Obi-Wan apologizes before he dies, telling Anakin that he knew that he had good in his heart, and that he'd been corrupted, he'd grown resentful, and that he was sorry. Finally, he requests that Anakin call him Obi-Wan again, not Darth Kryze, as he finally saw that that name that he had taken was disrespectful to the Duchess Satine. He passes away in Anakin's arms, and Anakin feels his presence leave, going into the next world of the Force. Meanwhile, on Tatooine, Boba discovers that he isn't the only one who'd been hunting the kids. When he arrives at the homestead, he sees Bosk, Aurra Sing, and Dengar, who are already battling with the clones. Aurra uses her pistols to try and hit Wolf, but he manages to roll towards the cover and fire back. Rex blasts at Dengar, and Gregor keeps the kids out of harm's way from all of them. Beru and Owen snipe at the attackers from the top of the building. One of the shots hits Boba's Beskar, and he fires a rocket at the Larses in retaliation. Just to make sure that he's made his point, he fires his flamethrower in the direction of the rebel, and he ensures that they're dead, incinerating them. Then, he turns his attention to the other bounty hunters, looking at them through his T-visor helmet, not even needing to tell them to get lost. Instead, he fires a blaster bolt in their direction. This starts a kerfuffle between the hunters, and the clones are able to escape with the commotion that ensues. They hop on the Larsa speeder, running away. Luke and Leia are traumatized by the deaths of their aunt and uncle, and Rex has to console them. "It'll be alright, kids," the retired commander says while he hugs them. "It'll be alright." Following Ahsoka's call, after killing Kenobi, Anakin and Ahsoka no longer need the secrets on Malachor, so they board Ahsoka's ship and fly away. She calls the Rebel Alliance and tells them that Obi-Wan was dead at the hands of the Chosen One. This gives the Rebel Alliance hope. Mon Mothma's unified rebel movement temporarily challenges the galactic government, which is helmed by a military junta with the death of Obi-Wan, that's led by Tarkin, Thrawn, and Yularen. They convince the people that Obi-Wan is still alive, and that this is all simply a rebel campaign to try and undermine the Empire, when Mon Mothma makes a grand announcement to the galaxy proclaiming Kenobi's death. Many citizens believe them. However, some do not. The rebellion gains some momentum, and things start to shift in the galactic balance. Anakin returns to Tatooine, and he thanks the clones for their service. He also thanks Ahsoka for helping them find his place as the Chosen One again. Together, Anakin travels the galaxy with his kids, Ahsoka and the clones, who are hoping to find their place in an ever-changing society. They continue to work with the rebellion together, and General Skywalker becomes a beacon of hope for the galaxy. He mourns the loss of Owen and Beru with his kids and the clones, who become close with the pair while they stayed with them. However, Anakin knows that their sacrifice might have been the difference between his children living and dying. The Force had a will, and the two of them had certainly been a part of it. Soon, perhaps the rebels would win with their help, and maybe with Anakin Skywalker being able to inspire the galaxy to fight against their galactic dictators, they would finally be able to live happily ever after. Alright folks, now that we're finished our story, it's time that we transition into the Ask Anything period, where questions from the Discord are featured at the end of our videos in order to have some engagement with you guys. So today's question is from Jam, and he asked, if you had to pick one what-if scenario to be made into a feature-length movie or TV show like Kenobi, which one would I choose and why? Honestly, I would pick last week's pod racing episode, where what if Vader left to continue pod racing like Anakin did. Oh my gosh, I had so much fun making that, and I have always loved pod racing, but there just isn't enough Disney Star Wars content about it. I don't understand why. Pod racing is such a popular thing with the fan base. It's virtually untouched, so you could make a completely new story from it with new characters, new plot lines, new planets to visit, and it would be so much fun. Everybody would enjoy it. You could just make a fun racing show that would definitely make a lot of money. And if you wanted to make that into a movie too, oh boy, it would be so much fun. So I would definitely want to extend that what if Vader went back into pod racing. I've had my own idea for a pod racing show for so long, and it would be sick if Disney were to do that one day and figure out how to implement that into their canon. But it doesn't seem like something they're touching, so I'm not going to get my hopes up. Maybe one day that'll change, but that day isn't today. Thank you guys all for watching today's video. I had a blast making it, and it's really great that you guys stick around to enjoy our content. If you folks enjoyed this video, I would recommend checking out our last video, which will be linked at the end of this one. We really appreciate you guys, and if you want to interact more with us, please join the Discord. I'm fairly active there. I love chatting with you guys. I love answering your questions, and it's just so much fun. We're building a great community, and I'm enjoying it tons. So please join the Discord if you're interested, and I would love to see you there so that we can chat all things Star Wars. Anyway, I hope that all of you have an absolutely bantatacular rest of your day, and as always, I hope that you've had your daily delicious dose of Banta Stew.